Today's episode is a rebroadcast of one of the most popular Delivering Miracles episodes that has aired so far. Enjoy the show. Delivering Miracles is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families like yours and mine. Download the free network app on any Apple and Android devices and listen to your favorite episodes on the go. Hey, have you checked out my brand new book, Pregnancy Brain, yet? It's all about the mind-body approach to stress management during a high-risk pregnancy specifically. It has stories from my very high-risk pregnancy, tons of client stories, and so much research on the impact of stress on pregnancy and pregnancy complications and how you can have a healthy pregnancy. I would love for you to check it out at pregnancybrainbook.com. That's pregnancybrainbook.com. Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. You might have heard that quote from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. It's a really popular phrase and quote from that play because it talks about how names really don't mean anything. It's her way of kind of telling him that it doesn't matter what family you're from, it doesn't matter what your name is, we can still be in love, right? And that was a quote that I was thinking about a lot recently when I was thinking about the words that we use when we describe and talk about our stories, whether it's our journey through infertility, our journey through a high-risk pregnancy, a journey through the NICU, the postpartum journey, our journey through healing from loss, whatever that might be. I've been thinking a lot about words and the words that we use because the reality is, while I love her intention that, hey, you can love anybody and your name doesn't matter and words don't matter, I do believe that in the case of your family building journey, words do matter. Labels matter. How you describe your situation, how you describe what you've been through, what you're going through, and the words that you use are actually really critical. And I'm not saying you got to be positive, they've got to be empowering, they've got to be really encouraging. I mean, yes, all of that is true. But today I want to talk to you about the other side of it, which are the words and the labels that really highlight your truth. Because what I find is, and I do this too, what I find is we tend to soften our words when we're talking to people outside of our little bubble. We tend to make it seem like what we've been through is less than, or it's easier to digest. And for me, I'll tell you honestly, part of the reason is because I'm afraid of making the other person uncomfortable, which is totally ridiculous when you think about it and when I say it like that. But that's my reality is I'm afraid of making other people uncomfortable because our journey is so challenging and there's so many pieces to it that have been so challenging for so long. And so I shy away from some of the words that really highlight what we've been through. And I'll be super honest with you, writing this book, which is coming out very, very soon on the mind-body science behind stress management and having a healthy high-risk pregnancy, that has really challenged how I've approached some of our journey and the words that I use. Because to heal, really heal from whatever it is that you're going through, you've got to be able to own the words. And not only that, but you've got to be able to share them in any circumstances and not worry about what it's going to do to the other person because they're your words for your journey. And a lesson that I've learned that I want to share with you today is that our loved ones look to us to guide them on how to support us during the challenging times of building our family. So when we use the words and labels that matter, it tells them what aspects of our journey are important to us. I wasn't always like this, shy about our words. I don't know if shy is even the right word. what is the right word? I don't know. Not shy in that I don't want to share, but more just like really worried about what the words mean. I wasn't always like that. And I'll tell you, the very first time that happened was when my son was born. And if you know a little bit about our journey, you know that I got pregnant after IVF, which is in vitro fertilization. And then I had a very complicated pregnancy. I was on bed rest for months. And then I delivered him at 24 weeks and 5 days, which is almost as early as babies can come and survive and have a chance at survival. They don't all survive. And you'll see this in the book, which is coming out soon. I describe this more in detail there, and if you listen to the first episode of Delivering Miracles, you know a little bit about the last 15 days of my pregnancy. They were extremely challenging. I mean, they were it was like I was a ticking time bomb and I could hear the clock tick, 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 tick. And I had landed in the hospital at 22 weeks and 4 days, which is way too early for a baby to survive. And we were just trying to get over the 24-week hump, because that is when there was even a chance at survival for him. And every day felt like such a battle. It took everything out of me, emotionally, mentally, physically, just everything. I would give everything, every moment of every day. And so when he was born at 24 weeks and 5 days. We crossed 24 weeks on a Sunday, and he was born on a Friday. And when he was born, he was obviously rushed off to the NICU, where we spent many months. And at the beginning, I was already very untrusting of the NICU because I had never met any of the nurses. I'd only met a few of the neonatologists, which are the doctors in the NICU. So I didn't know them. And I was kind of in my head like, you don't know what we've been through. You don't know us. Who are you? I mean, of course, I trusted them to take care of my son, but there wasn't that personal trust built yet. Now I'm friends with many of our staff, so it worked out great. But at the time, I didn't trust them. I didn't know who they were. They were unfamiliar to me. And suddenly my son's life was in their hands. And then I overheard them talking. I think they must have said it before, but I think by the time it registered in my brain, he was probably maybe 2 or 3 days old. And they called him a 24-weeker, which he is. He was born at 24 weeks and 5 days. Except it made my blood boil, among other things that were going on. But this really struck a nerve with me, because what that said is it minimized the intense fight that I had fought for those 5 days. He was not born on the Sunday. He was born on a Friday. Don't forget that. You have no idea what I had to do and what I had to go through and what I had to feel to get us to Friday. It drove me nuts. And that was the first time that I experienced how much these words matter. Because a baby born at 24 plus 0 has a completely different experience than 24 plus 5. A mom who delivers at 24 plus 0 has a different experience than 24 plus 5. Now, I understand if you also delivered at 24 plus 5, and I did too, we're still going to have different experiences. But what I'm trying to say is those 5 days to me mattered so much, and I didn't want that swept under the rug. Because that was a really important part of my experience. That we got those 5 days, that they were so excruciatingly hard. But he got those 5 days before he was born. That was really important to me. And so I started using that. I would never call him a 24-weeker in the hospital. And for years after, I would not say it. Oh, how early was your son born? He was born at 24 weeks and 5 days. I still say that. I've started slipping into the 24-weeker now a little bit when I have to speak in shorthand, especially to medical professionals, because they don't seem to want to know too much about the days and the hours, especially now that we're so many years out. Now it's not nearly as relevant medically. But still, I will still default to 24 plus 5 because those 5 days matter. Those 5 days were very real, important 5 days for us. And what that did, This is not just like a personal preference thing. There's a reason why I'm telling you the story and why we're talking about this today. Because what that did was it clued a lot of the nurses in on how to talk to me. I never had to sit them down and say, excuse me, please don't call him a 24-weeker. We got 5 extra days. He was born at 24 plus 5. I didn't have to actually have that conversation. But what it did do was it clued them in, especially the ones who are really sensitive to mom's emotional experience, the ones who'd been there a long time or the ones who are just really good at that. They realized that this was something that I was saying all the time. This was something that I was using that word all the time when the specialists would come in, the neurologist and the cardiologist, the pulmonologist, respiratory techs, all of that. When they'd come in and they'd ask about him, I would always say he was born at 24 weeks and 5 days. And it clued them in. And then they started using those words. I don't know if they used it amongst themselves during their case conferences and things. And that didn't really matter to me. What mattered to me is that they understood that there was a part of our fight that they forgot about when they called him a 24-weeker. Like they're lumping him in with all other 24-weekers when they know also medically that depending on where in that week you're born, it could really change the course of things. And so they started using that language with me. And then what that did was they started asking about that experience. What were those 5 days like? What happened in that last week? And then it started to matter, right? And now we're not talking medically. They knew that. They had my chart. They knew what had happened in that week and how my health had impacted him and how that triggered labor and all of that. They knew all that. But as they got to know me, and because we were in the NICU for so long, we got to know pretty much everybody in the unit quite well. But they started asking about those details. And that's how that community was formed for me. But it wouldn't have happened this way had I not held on to the words that were important to me. And in this case, one of them, I have many of them, right? This was just the first time that it really occurred to me, hey, I don't like the words you're using to describe my story and my journey, because my journey is not of delivering a 24-weeker. It's delivering a baby at 24 weeks and 5 days. This may not be an issue for you, right? But we've all got these very specific details about our story that highlight the important aspects of our journey that are the kind of anchor points or the critical points of our story that we don't want people to gloss over because they matter to us. And when they matter to us, we can create a community around that. We can find our support system around those critical aspects of it. And when that happens, we start shaping our identity. We start shaping our experiences. We start shaping our healing around these anchor points so that I went from being adamant and angry about having delivered at 24 plus 5 to being sad about it, to being ashamed of it, to now being proud of it. It's like a wound that creates that tissue kind of grows around. These anchor points matter. They're important. And they're important for your healing journey. They're important for helping you create community and helping you create that connection and really anchor you in your story to say, hey, this is mine. It's to give you that ownership. Say, this is my story and this is the important part of it that I want you to know about and I want you to honor. This comes up a lot when we talk about families who lose a baby. Right? You might have read articles that are floating around on the internet about how when somebody loses a baby, you should use the baby's name. I think a lot of people shy away from doing that because a lot of people are afraid, oh, I don't want to make you feel bad. So I don't want to remind you that baby Oliver passed away or, baby Jane is gone or something like that. So I won't use the name. I'll just kind of skirt around it. And it's actually the opposite. It's actually the opposite. When you lose somebody, and this is not just for babies, it's when you lose anyone, right? Use the person's name. I had a client who joined my Healing Hearts After Loss program, which is a bereavement program to help women who want to get pregnant again, work through their grief so they can prepare their bodies for pregnancy again. And she had a miscarriage at 7 weeks, but she already had a name for the baby. Now, miscarriage is really tricky, especially early miscarriage like this, because I think in general, it's also really hard for people to wrap their heads around the fact that there was a baby. At 7 weeks, you're not really showing. There's really no outward sign of it. And if you don't tell anyone, nobody really knows. So there's already that kind of stigma and that kind of, was this even really a pregnancy? That kind of feel amongst a lot of people. It can happen. And then, so she was dealing with that. And then she shared with me that she had a name for the baby. They had actually decided the name long before she was pregnant. And because she was pregnant after IVF, she knew whether she was having a boy or girl, and they had a name picked out. And so much of the work that we had done was around her feeling like, why is this such a big deal? Like it was only 7 weeks. I shouldn't have to want this, but I really want people to use this baby's name. I really want my mom to ask me how I'm feeling about losing baby, insert name. I'm not sharing it obviously for confidentiality reasons, but she really wanted that. She really wanted that. And so a lot of the work that we had done was on helping her build that confidence for her to start using the name. And similar to my experience, and maybe you've experienced this too, where you want to use it and you want to, and you do have that confidence, but then in the moment you kind of shy away from it because you're afraid of making other people feel bad, or you're afraid of being like the person that stops conversation. God, I have been in that situation so many times where people are sharing labor stories or pregnancy stories, and I usually don't participate in them because of how it usually goes. And then when people ask, oh, what cravings did you have? Or, oh, how's the third trimester for you? Well, didn't quite make it there. And then it goes silent and it's crickets and it's awkward. And you don't want to be that person. Or, whatever the reason might be, we have our reasons for why we know we want to use these words, but we don't. But the way to turn the conversation around, the way to build that community, and the way to start your healing process is to actually find those labels and those words that matter. And so she made a commitment to start using the baby's name, kind of letting go the awkwardness that might come from it, the worries about what it's going to make people feel when she does that. We prepared some kind of scripts for her of what to say in certain situations so she's not caught off guard. That's one of the hardest things, right? Is when you're caught off guard by somebody's comment and you don't know how to respond, and then you think of things later. So we came up with scripts for situations where she knew she wouldn't be able to think on the spot so that she'd have something to use. And she practiced and she used it. And what happened was really, really beautiful. Again, this is not just about you needing to use the words. It's about creating relationships, deep, meaningful relationships around the part of your story that's important to you. And what happened was when she started using the baby's name, it suddenly didn't become this like elephant in the room anymore. All of a sudden, her mom, who completely had the hardest time accepting that she was even pregnant, she even said to her, it's only 7 weeks. Not like it was a baby. I know. It happens. People say things like that. There's a lot of reasons. We could talk about that forever, about why people say things like that, but they do. And it's hurtful. And she went from that extreme to asking about the baby frequently when she'd hit milestones of she would have been, second trimester by now. Oh, she would have been third trimester by now. This was her due date. She started using the name. I worked with this client for only a few weeks, but I would get updates from her frequently about this would have been the birthday. I bought this outfit for the baby, and she would use the name. And it was just amazing to see not just what that changed for my client in terms of her experience of the story. It made it so much easier to grieve when she didn't feel like she had to hide that grief. And there was so much love that was piled on top of that grief when she heard her baby's name over and over and over. It didn't make her feel bad. She loved it. She absolutely loved it. And that's what she wanted. That was her thing. That was one of her things that was so important for her that she didn't want people to gloss over. And by her using it, it changed relationships for her. Similarly, I had another client who got pregnant easily, had a baby, easy pregnancy. Everything was fine the first time around. And the second time around, she thought the same thing would happen, and it didn't. And they were trying and trying and trying for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, almost a year, and nothing happened. And eventually, she did get pregnant. She had to turn to fertility treatment, and then she had a healthy pregnancy after that. But when she talks about her experience, for her, the term secondary infertility is really important. Yeah, I have 2 kids, but I suffered from secondary infertility. That's what she wanted to say. She wanted to be able to acknowledge that. She wanted people to acknowledge that. She didn't want people to see, oh, you had 2 kids and they're almost perfectly spaced apart, and they're so cute, and you've got the perfect family. That was, yeah, and she agreed with that. She was very grateful for her life, but there's this piece of it that she really wanted people to understand. And, not necessarily the world, right? These are not labels or words that you necessarily have to share with everybody. There might be very select few people in your life where it's important that they get the story and they use the words that you use that are important to you. And for her, it was her inner group of people, her family and her friends. And she wanted them to know that, hey, I struggled with this second one. Is it because she was not willing to let go of that struggle? Of course not. Right? We talk all the time about being able to be grateful and grieve at the same time. That's what she was doing. This was an important part of her journey. This was an important part of her experience that she didn't want people to gloss over because she didn't want to have to gloss over it. So she started talking about it. She started using the term secondary infertility. And if you're not sure what that is, it just means that you have a history of, I have personal issues with this definition, but basically they say that you are able to get pregnant and have a baby. I think the term is have a successful delivery or something really vague like that the first time, and then you are not able to get pregnant the second time. It's a really vague, weird description. And I actually want to do a whole episode on this with a reproductive endocrinologist because I have a lot of issues with the way that that's described. But it essentially means you were able to have a baby the first time and you were having trouble the second time or third or whatever. Secondary infertility is what it means. And we're actually going to do an entire episode about this next week where one of my friends comes on and shares her experience, the emotional side of secondary infertility. So that's coming up. But this is all to say, again, what are the words that you're using or not using, but that are important to you to use? What are they? Because I don't want you to shy away from them. I don't want you to hide from them. I don't want you to keep them to yourself around people who you want to acknowledge these labels and these words, right? Again, we're not saying tell the whole world. It's not like have a sign everywhere you go and broadcast it unless you want to. Great. But if you don't want that, that's okay. I'm not saying you have to. I'm saying for your healing, for your ability to create deep, meaningful connections and a community around you to help support you as you're going through it, as you're healing from it, you've got to use the words that are important to you. And the way to do that is really to start using them yourself. Your loved ones are looking to to guide them on how to support you during these challenging times of building a family. So use the words, use the labels that are important to you, and they will follow. There's two things to consider here, though. It's not just that simple. Nothing is, right? Two things that I want to share with you about this before we wrap up, which is maybe you're on board. Maybe you're not like me where you're worried about making other people uncomfortable. And that's awesome. Something I am striving for. So maybe you're okay with it. Maybe you're okay with using your words and your labels, and you are leading with that and you're using them. And there are people that are following your lead and able to use them with you, your baby's name or certain diagnoses that are really important for you to consider or certain gestational ages and how specific they are, things like that, right? Maybe that's happening. I have a friend actually who I love this. I love this so much. And I have not figured out my way of doing this, but I love that when somebody asks her, how many children do you have? Or, oh, you have 2 children? She always answers, no, I've got 6, 2 in my arms, 4 in heaven. And she just says it like the sky's blue. I'm wearing a red shirt. I've got 6 kids. It's something I totally aspire to. Still, even if you do that, which she does very, very well. She has so much confidence around her when she says that. There are still going to be people who are going to get uncomfortable. It's their own stuff. They can't handle the grief. They can't handle the reality. They can't handle whatever it is that's being stirred up by them, by the words that you're using. They just can't go there. That's their stuff. That's not yours. Them being unable to use your words as you're trying this out and practicing and putting yourself out there, them being unable to meet you with that and use the words that are important to you, that doesn't diminish your journey or your experiences. That doesn't change the fact that it's important to you to use those words at all. And you shouldn't stop, right? It's your choice at that point. What happens with that relationship? Do you back off? Do you educate? Do you have a conversation about it? Do you just kind of say, okay, well, Jane doesn't know. She's not ever going to use this word. So maybe we don't talk about this, but we can talk about everything else with each other. It's your choice. It's your choice. I know relationships changing is a really big source of stress and grief and a lot of angst during infertility and a high-risk pregnancy, having a baby in the NICU and postpartum complications, all of that. Relationships change and it's hard. It's really, really challenging. I want to remind you that it's your choice what happens in that relationship when people are not able to meet you and use the words that are important to you. And it doesn't have to be an off and on, black or white, we're friends or we're not friends kind of situation. You can find something in between that'll work for you, that allows you to have that relationship without it being something that could potentially hurt you when, they don't use the baby's name, or they keep calling your baby a 26-weeker when you want it to be 26 plus 1, or, whatever it is that is important to you that they're not able to say. Okay. That's one thing that I wanted to share with you. The other thing is, this is not a free for all to be able to say whatever you want about your journey and think that it's okay. Okay. Because if the words or labels you're using are self-disparaging, then that's not helpful to your healing journey. I mean, we did do an episode about being honest about how you feel, right? If you feel broken, you can say, I feel broken, but that doesn't mean you are broken. You see the difference here? What we're talking about here is the facts about your journey are important. I feel broken is a fact. I am broken is not. My son was born at 24 weeks and 5 days is a fact. I failed him is not. See what I mean? So if you have friends or loved ones who are pushing back on some of the things that you're saying, take a moment to step back and think, are they pushing back on the facts because they're uncomfortable, or are they pushing back because they want me to be kinder to myself and show myself some more compassion? Because there is that too. There is that piece there too, right? And all of these pieces are like, it's a puzzle. You put together one piece at a time as you're on your path to healing, and all of these pieces matter. They all matter, and they're not mutually exclusive. They all are equally important. The words you use matter, and I don't want you to hide from using them, because I know I'm tired of it, right? And the truth is, your loved ones are looking to you to guide them on how to support you during the challenges that you're facing right now, or as you're trying to heal. So use the words and labels that matter to you, and your loved ones will follow. As we wrap this up, I found this quote that felt so appropriate for what we're talking about today. I don't know who said it, but the quote goes, "Sometimes sharing our lives' story is perhaps the best way to let others know about our faith, belief, and convictions." And I think that's exactly what we're getting at here today, right? The words you use, the labels that you use, the box that you put yourself in, or the phrases that matter, really let your loved ones know what's important about your journey. What do you feel is the defining moment in your life, or your baby's life, or your married life with your partner? You decide that. You decide that. And the words that you use really let people know this is the anchor in that story. This is the part that's really important to her. And the ones that are able to do it will start using those words too. And oh my gosh, I can't tell you, when you experience it, it's amazing. The healing that comes from that, the permission of being able to use the words as they are. 24 plus 5. I have 6 kids, 2 in my arms, 4 in heaven. Just to be able to say that, oh man, it is truly a healing experience every single time you're able to say that, and the person on the other side is able to hear it. So use them. Use your words. Use the words that matter and that are important to you. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Topics like these are really ones that I love. The reality, the real stuff, right? The stuff that nobody's talking about. Stuff that I wish somebody told me, right? These little things that we keep brushing to the side, but really do matter. So I love talking about this stuff, and I hope that you do too. And if you liked today's episode, please head over to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review so more and more women who are going through infertility and a high-risk pregnancy, bed rest, having a baby in the NICU, or trying to heal from it all after it's all over can tune into Delivering Miracles and learn how they can just get through this, because it is freaking hard, man. It's hard. And if you're going through infertility, a high-risk pregnancy, are on bed rest or in the NICU or healing afterwards, after baby's home, I would love for you to check out my resource library at parijatdeshpande.com/masterclass, where we have a bunch of resources for every step of the family building journey for you to check out and learn more about. We're still building out this library, so if you don't see a topic that you're looking for, shoot us an email and let us know, because we may just have something cooking behind the scenes for you that's almost ready to come out. So check it out and let me know what you think. Also, I would love to stay in touch, so follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Parijat Desh. That's PARIJATDESH. You decide what's important about your story and your journey. You decide what words are important, what labels are important, and which ones you want to hold on to, because they are the anchor points and the defining moments of your path to being where you are right now. Use them with confidence, use them often, and others will follow. Take it one day, one step at a time. You can do this.